I stood there at the company holiday party, heart racing, as I clinked my glass to make my announcement. After years of rebuilding my life, I was finally engaged. The room quieted as I opened my mouth to share my happiness, but before I could finish, a familiar laugh cut through the silence. My ex-wife Jessica smirked from across the room. "Who would marry a loser like you?" she mocked loudly. The entire room froze, all eyes darting between us. Instead of reacting, I just smiled knowingly. She had no idea what was coming next. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments and hit that subscribe button if you want to see what happened when my fiancé walked in and my ex realized exactly who she was about to mock. The story of Jessica and me began like many others, with stars in our eyes and dreams of forever. We met during our junior year of college when we were paired for a marketing project. Jessica was stunning, confident, and from a wealthy family in Connecticut. I was a middle-class kid from Ohio who had earned my spot through scholarships and part-time jobs. Something about our differences attracted us to each other, and within 6 months we were inseparable. Looking back, I should have seen the warning signs. Jessica constantly made small comments about my clothes, suggesting they were not quite good enough. She would gently correct my table manners when we dined with her parents. At the time, I mistook these actions for her helping me fit into her world. I was wrong. We married shortly after graduation against the subtle disapproval of her parents. I had landed a decent job at a tech company, and Jessica found work at the same company through her family connections. For the first year, things were manageable. We rented a small apartment that Jessica constantly reminded me was temporary until I could afford something better. As time passed, her criticisms grew more frequent and harsh. My salary was never enough. Our apartment was embarrassing to show to her friends. Even my career ambitions were too small in her eyes. "Michael, do you really want to be stuck in middle management forever?" she would ask with that particular tone that made me feel 2 inches tall. I worked overtime and weekends trying to earn more to afford the lifestyle she expected. I neglected my health, my friends, and my own interests. Photography, which had once been my passion, gathered dust, as I had no time between work and meeting Jessica's ever-growing expectations. When I did pick up my camera, she would make remarks about my little hobby and how it was cute but would never amount to anything. 5 years into our marriage, I was a shell of my former self. My confidence was completely shattered. I second-guessed every decision, always hearing Jessica's voice in my head, telling me I was making the wrong choice. At work, I had become so anxious about failure that I struggled to contribute in meetings, always fearing Jessica's judgment afterward. She had become somewhat of a rising star in the marketing department and never let me forget it. Then came the day that broke everything apart. I came home early, having finally finished a major project, hoping to surprise Jessica with dinner reservations at her favorite restaurant. Instead, I was the one surprised. I found her and my boss, Thomas, in our bed. The betrayal cut deep on multiple levels. Not only was my wife cheating, but she had chosen someone who had power over my career. "This is not how I wanted you to find out," Jessica said coldly, as she dressed, not a hint of remorse in her voice. "But honestly, Michael, what did you expect? Thomas is going somewhere in life. You just never had that kind of ambition." The divorce was brutal. Jessica came from money and had family friends who were excellent attorneys. Despite her infidelity, I somehow ended up losing our home in the settlement. I was forced to pay alimony, even though she now flaunted her relationship with Thomas, who earned considerably more than I did. I moved into a tiny one-bedroom apartment across town, taking only my clothes, my old camera, and a few personal items. Work became a daily nightmare. Thomas was still my boss, and while he maintained a professional demeanor, everyone knew what had happened. Jessica made no effort to be discreet. She would often visit Thomas for lunch, making sure to walk past my desk. The whispers followed me everywhere. Jessica subtly spread rumors questioning my competence and emotional stability. I nearly lost my job during this period. My performance suffered as depression took hold. Only the intervention of another manager who recognized what was happening saved me. I was transferred to a different department, which gave me some breathing room but meant a lateral move rather than the promotion I had been working toward. 6 months after the divorce, I hit rock bottom. I was still dealing with panic attacks whenever I encountered Jessica at company events. I had withdrawn from the few friends I had managed to maintain during my marriage. Jessica had systematically alienated me from many of them anyway, always finding faults with anyone I was close to. The alimony payments strained my already tight budget, while Jessica lived luxuriously with Thomas. One particularly bad night after a company meeting where Jessica had made a point of belittling my contribution to a project I seriously considered quitting. But I could not afford to give up my income, especially with the alimony obligations. I sat alone in my sparse apartment staring at my old camera and realized I did not recognize the man I had become. That night represented a turning point. I decided that while I could not change my circumstances immediately, I could begin reclaiming myself. The next day, I made an appointment with a therapist. It was one of the hardest things I had ever done, admitting how much I had lost of myself in that relationship. The therapist helped me see how Jessica's treatment had been emotional abuse, systematically destroying my self-confidence and isolating me from support systems. Therapy was not an instant fix, but it gave me tools to start rebuilding. I established small, achievable goals. The first was to pick up my camera again. I signed up for an advanced photography class, something Jessica had always discouraged as a waste of time and money. Next, I reached out to an old college friend Jessica had particularly disliked. We met for coffee, and the conversation flowed as if no time had passed. At work, I began setting boundaries. I requested to be excluded from projects directly involving Jessica's department when possible. I started eating lunch at my desk or outside the building to minimize accidental encounters. I focused intensely on my new role, determined to prove my value to the company, despite the whispers and rumors. Slowly, things began to improve. My new department head recognized my dedication and gave me increasingly important responsibilities. I reconnected with more old friends and even made new ones through my photography class. I started hiking on weekends, another activity Jessica had scorned as beneath our social standing. In nature, with my camera in hand, I rediscovered pieces of myself I had thought were gone forever. It was on one of these photography hikes that I first met Amanda. She was photographing wildflowers along the same trail, her concentration so complete that she did not notice me until I was almost beside her. She jumped slightly, then laughed at herself. That laugh was nothing like Jessica's cutting sound. It was warm, genuine, slightly embarrassed. We talked for hours that day, first about photography techniques, then about everything else. Amanda was a curator at a prestigious art gallery in the city. She was knowledgeable but completely unpretentious. She spoke passionately about emerging artists and her desire to help them gain recognition. When she asked for my number at the end of our hike, I hesitated. I was still raw from my divorce, still uncertain of my own worth. "Just for photography discussions," she said, seemingly sensing my reluctance. I agreed to that limited scope, not expecting anything to come from it. Amanda turned out to be persistent in the gentlest way possible. Our text conversations about photography gradually expanded to other topics. She invited me to gallery openings, introducing me to her world without any pressure or expectation that I change to fit it. Unlike Jessica, who had always wanted to mold me into someone else, Amanda seemed genuinely interested in who I actually was. Our friendship evolved slowly into something more. I was terrified of repeating past mistakes, of misreading signals, of trusting the wrong person. Amanda was patient with my caution. "Everyone has scars, Michael," she told me after I finally shared some of my history with her. "The right people will give you space to heal without making you feel broken." As months passed, I continued to grow stronger. At work, my projects were succeeding, earning recognition from upper management. I was finally considered for the promotion I had been working toward before the divorce. My friendships deepened and multiplied. My photography improved to the point where I was invited to display some pieces at a small community exhibition. Amanda was there for all of it, cheering me on, but never taking credit for my progress. She celebrated my victories as mine, not as something she had created or fixed. When I was offered the promotion, she suggested we go hiking to my favorite spot to celebrate, knowing that nature had become my sanctuary. It was there, surrounded by autumn foliage, with the late afternoon light creating a golden glow, that I realized I had fallen in love with her. Not the desperate, anxious attachment I had felt with Jessica, but something calmer, stronger, more certain. Amanda had seen me at my most vulnerable, and had never once used that vulnerability against me. For another 6 months, I kept this realization to myself, afraid to disrupt the beautiful friendship we had built. But as my confidence in other areas of my life grew, so did my courage to take this risk. On another hike, this time in winter, with snow covering the landscape like a clean slate, I asked Amanda if she would consider being more than friends. Her smile was answer enough before she even spoke. Our relationship developed naturally without the whirlwind intensity that had characterized my time with Jessica. We moved at a pace that felt comfortable for both of us. I was learning to trust again not just Amanda but my own judgment as well. She introduced me to her friends and family, all of whom welcomed me warmly. I gradually did the same, though I was more cautious. The memory of how Jessica had isolated me still fresh. 2 years after we met, I knew without doubt that Amanda was the person I wanted to spend my life with. I planned a proposal that spoke to our shared loves, a photography trip to a breathtaking natural location at sunrise. When I knelt in the early morning light and asked her to marry me, her joy was so pure and unguarded that it washed away the last of my doubts about deserving happiness. The engagement ring was not as expensive as what Jessica would have demanded, but it was personally meaningful, with a design that incorporated elements of our shared passions. Amanda cried when I explained the symbolism, understanding the thought behind it rather than focusing on the price tag. We agreed to keep our engagement relatively quiet, at first wanting to savor it privately before sharing with the wider world. But as the company holiday party approached, we decided it was time to announce it officially. Amanda would be attending for the first time, arriving a bit late due to an evening gallery event she could not miss. I knew Jessica and Thomas would be there. Jessica had continued her ascent in the company, partly through her connection with Thomas, partly through her own ruthless ambition. They were now considered a power couple within the organization. I had managed to avoid close interaction with them for nearly 3 years, but I knew our paths would cross at the party. I did not anticipate how dramatically that would happen. The hotel ballroom was elegantly decorated for the holiday party with twinkling lights and tasteful holiday arrangements. I arrived alone, having promised to meet Amanda there. When her gallery event concluded, I felt confident in my tailored suit, so different from the uncertain man I had been a few years earlier. Several colleagues greeted me warmly, asking about recent projects and upcoming plans. Thomas and Jessica made their entrance about an hour into the party. As usual, Jessica was impeccably dressed in a designer outfit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. They moved through the room like visiting royalty, Jessica laughing too loudly at the executive's jokes, Thomas playing the role of the successful power broker. I kept my distance, focusing on genuine conversations with coworkers who had become actual friends over time. As the evening progressed, our CEO made a brief speech thanking everyone for their contributions over the past year. He then invited anyone with personal announcements to share them. Several people stepped forward, announcing promotions, babies, relocations. Something pushed me to step up as well. Perhaps it was the champagne, or perhaps it was finally feeling secure enough in my happiness to announce it publicly. I clinked my glass gently, and the room quieted. I would like to share some happy news, I began. After finding my way through some difficult times, I am thrilled to announce that I am engaged to the most amazing woman I have ever known. She will be joining us later tonight, and I cannot wait for you all to meet her. Several people began to offer congratulations when Jessica's cutting laugh sliced through the murmurs. "Who would marry a loser like you?" she said loudly, her voice carrying across the entire room. "Seriously, Michael, did you have to pay someone to accept that ring? Or is she just as pathetic as you are?" The room fell completely silent. Thomas looked uncomfortable beside Jessica, though he made no move to restrain her behavior. I could feel dozens of eyes on me waiting for my reaction. The old Michael might have slunk away in humiliation. The old Michael might have believed her words contained some truth. But I was not that man anymore. I simply smiled, neither confirming nor denying her cruel assessment. "I guess you will have to judge for yourself when she arrives," I said calmly. Jessica took my response as weakness. She moved closer, wineglass in hand, clearly enjoying having an audience for her performance. "I am just looking out for this poor woman," she announced to the room. "Someone should warn her what she is getting into. Boring, unambitious, completely lacking any backbone. Trust me, I would know." I maintained my composure, though inside I was counting the minutes until Amanda would arrive. Jessica continued her commentary, growing more emboldened by my silence, detailing various shortcomings she had found in me during our marriage. Some of the newer employees looked shocked, while those who had been around longer seemed embarrassed for both of us. Thomas finally tried to intervene, putting his hand on Jessica's arm. "That is enough, Jess. This is not the time or place." His attempt at damage control came too late. Jessica had already revealed her true nature to everyone present. Just as Jessica was launching into another critique of my imagined failings, the ballroom doors opened. Amanda entered looking breathtaking in a deep blue dress that complemented her eyes perfectly. She had come directly from her gallery event and carried herself with the quiet confidence that had first attracted me to her. Her eyes searched the room and lit up when she found me. As Amanda made her way toward me, I watched Jessica's face transform. First came confusion, then recognition, then something close to horror. The wine glass in her hand tilted dangerously as her grip loosened. "Amanda Sullivan, Jessica," said, her voice now missing its mocking edge. "You are engaged to Amanda Sullivan." Amanda reached my side and slipped her hand into mine before turning to face Jessica. "Hello, Jessica," she said pleasantly, though I could feel the slight tension in her hand. It has been quite a while. For those watching, confusion was evident. How did these two women know each other? The answer came quickly as Jessica struggled to recover her composure. "I did not realize you two had met," she said weakly. Amanda smiled, the picture of grace under pressure. "Oh yes. Jessica submitted her artwork to my father's gallery several years ago. I was just starting my curatorial career then." She turned to the confused onlookers and explained with perfect politeness. "My family owns the Sullivan Gallery." Jessica was quite insistent that her work deserved a featured exhibition, despite our portfolio focus being quite different from her style. I had known, of course, about this connection. Amanda had recognized Jessica's name when I first mentioned my ex-wife, though she had not immediately shared the full history. As our relationship developed, she had explained their prior interaction. Jessica had been incredibly rude to Amanda during the portfolio review, insisting that her family name and connections should guarantee her a spot in the gallery, regardless of the quality or fit of her work. What I had not known until this moment was that Amanda had since become part owner of Art Pulse, one of the most influential publications in the art world. Thomas, who collected art and fancied himself a connoisseur, clearly recognized the name immediately. His face paled as he realized the potential implications for Jessica. Art Pulse has been doing some fascinating features on emerging corporate collections. Amanda continued conversationally, now addressing Thomas directly. "I would love to hear about your acquisition strategy sometime." Jessica's expression was a complex mixture of emotions. The woman who had moments ago been publicly humiliating me was now frantically calculating how to salvage the situation. Her art aspirations, which she had apparently been pursuing alongside her corporate career, could be significantly impacted by making an enemy of Amanda. "I would love to show you how my work has evolved," Jessica said, attempting to sound warm and collegial. "Perhaps we could do lunch next week." Amanda's smile remained perfectly pleasant. "My schedule is quite full with wedding planning and our upcoming special issue, but your contact information is in our system. If something opens up, my assistant will reach out." The professional dismissal was delivered so smoothly that only those who knew the history could recognize it for what it was. Jessica's face flushed red as she realized she was being handled much as she might manage an annoying business contact. "Congratulations on your engagement," Thomas said clearly, trying to diffuse the tension. "Amanda, your gallery has an impressive reputation. Jessica has mentioned your father's eye for emerging talent many times." This attempt at social smoothing only made things worse, as Jessica had clearly never mentioned to Thomas that she had been rejected by the Sullivan Gallery, much less how she had behaved during the process. Amanda thanked him graciously before turning to me with genuine warmth. "Should we mingle, I would love to meet your colleagues properly." As we moved away from Jessica and Thomas, I could feel the shift in the room. Colleagues who had witnessed Jessica's cruel mockery now approached with sincere congratulations. Several people who had been keeping their distance from me professionally, perhaps influenced by Jessica's whisper campaign over the years, now made points of introducing themselves to Amanda and mentioning potential collaborations with me. Throughout the remainder of the evening, I watched Jessica attempting to recover her social footing. She tried several times to approach Amanda, clearly hoping to establish some connection that might protect her artistic ambitions. Amanda remained polite but distant, never giving Jessica the opportunity for a private conversation. By the end of the night, the power dynamics had shifted dramatically. Jessica and Thomas left early, her expression tight and unhappy. I later learned from a colleague that they had argued in the parking lot, with Thomas questioning why Jessica had never mentioned the true nature of her interaction with the Sullivan Gallery. The weeks following the holiday party brought significant changes. Jessica suddenly requested a transfer to a different department, one that would not require interaction with my team. Thomas became notably cooler toward her publicly, though they remained together. Colleagues who had previously kept their distance now sought me out for project collaborations and lunch invitations. I took no pleasure in Jessica's discomfort, having moved beyond the need for revenge. My focus remained on building my future with Amanda and continuing my professional growth. We set our wedding date for the following spring, planning a ceremony that reflected our shared values rather than social expectations. 2 months after the party incident, Jessica approached me in the company cafeteria. I had just gotten my lunch and was heading to meet some colleagues when she stepped into my path. She looked different, somehow diminished, without her usual armor of superiority. "Michael, can we talk?" she asked, her voice lacking its usual sharp edge. I hesitated, then nodded and followed her to an unoccupied corner table. We sat in awkward silence for a moment before she spoke. "I want to apologize for my behavior at the holiday party," she began, not quite meeting my eyes. "It was inappropriate and unprofessional." I studied her face, trying to gauge her sincerity. "Why now, Jessica?" She fidgeted with her water bottle. "Thomas and I have been having problems. He says I was cruel to you during the marriage and after. He thinks I need to make amends." The apology was not truly for me then, but to salvage her relationship with Thomas. Still, it represented growth of a sort. The Jessica I had been married to would never have apologized for anything, even strategically. "I accept your apology," I said simply, "but I think we both know this is not just about the holiday party." Jessica nodded reluctantly. "I treated you badly. I was unhappy and took it out on you instead of dealing with my own issues." This felt closer to genuine insight, though still offered primarily to serve her own interests. I wondered briefly if Thomas had suggested therapy, or if the relationship problems had triggered some real self-reflection. "Thank you for acknowledging that," I said. "I hope you find whatever you are looking for, Jessica." "I really do." As I stood to leave, she asked, "Are you really happy now?" There was something wistful in her question, suggesting that despite her material success and status, happiness might be eluding her. "Yes," I answered honestly. "I am." I rejoined my colleagues, feeling a sense of closure that had nothing to do with triumph over Jessica and everything to do with my own journey to healing. The encounter reinforced something Amanda had told me months earlier. Living well truly is the best response to those who have hurt you. The wedding planning continued a joyful process that Amanda and I approached as a team. We chose a venue that allowed us to incorporate our love of nature and photography, with the ceremony set against a backdrop of mountains and spring wildflowers. I reconnected with family members I had grown distant from during my marriage to Jessica, including my parents who had always had reservations about her, but had tried to support my choices. Amanda's family embraced me completely. Her father, the gallery owner who had once refused Jessica's art, became a mentor of sorts, encouraging my photography and even displaying some of my nature work in a community showcase at their gallery. The contrast between how Jessica's family had treated me and how Amanda's welcomed me could not have been more stark. On our wedding day, surrounded by genuine friends and loving family, I felt a profound sense of gratitude for the difficult journey that had led me to this point. The pain of my first marriage and divorce had nearly broken me, but through that breaking I had discovered my true strength and worth. Amanda and I wrote our own vows, promises not of blind devotion, but of mutual respect, support, and the freedom to grow together. As we spoke these words to each other under the open sky, I realized that I had found not just love, but partnership in its truest form. Jessica and Thomas separated shortly before our wedding. Office gossip suggested that her controlling nature had finally pushed him away, much as it had destroyed our marriage. While I took no pleasure in her unhappiness, I recognized the pattern. Without addressing her own issues, Jessica was likely to repeat the same destructive behaviors in her next relationship. In contrast, I had done the difficult work of healing and growth. With Amanda by my side, I continued to advance professionally, eventually being promoted to a leadership position I could never have imagined during the dark days of my divorce. My photography flourished as a serious avocation, with several pieces being sold through local galleries. Most importantly, I learned to define myself by my own standards, rather than through others' judgments. The opinions that once would have devastated me now held no power. I understood that no one else could determine my worth unless I gave them that authority. Looking back on that holiday party now, I can see it as the moment when my past and future collided, when the person I had become finally and completely eclipsed the person I had been. Jessica's mockery once so cutting revealed more about her character than it ever did about mine. The greatest revenge was never about watching Jessica face consequences or lose status. It was about reclaiming myself, about building a life of authentic connection and purpose. It was about discovering that happiness is not found in proving others wrong, but in living according to your own truth. If you have ever faced someone who tried to diminish you, if you have ever struggled to believe in your own worth after betrayal or loss, I hope my story offers some comfort. Healing is possible. A better life awaits beyond the pain. The people who hurt us do not get to write the end of our story. Have you ever had someone from your past try to humiliate you only to have it backfire on them? Share your experience in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more real-life stories about overcoming life's challenges. Do not forget to share with someone who might need to hear that their current pain is not the end of their story. Thank you for listening, and remember that sometimes the difficult chapters of our lives are just setting us up for the beautiful ones to come.